Also, I was kind of curious as to how Parks and Rec plans to use this revenue. If it's going into the Parks and Rec fund, is the general fund going to stop funding something by $36,000 a year, or are they going to continue the funding? And this is really a growth of the department. And I didn't notice in here any public opposition. Was there a chance for the public to come forward and vet this? Thank you.
Right, and I do recall that this went through to Parks and Rec, and we actually received a few letters on it. So let me go ahead and, did you want to speak on the Verizon? All right.
Yeah, I do too, since this is my field too also. Regarding the construction of this tower, is this going to be a co-locatable tower so that we can have several carriers on it? Is it stealth? Also,
I'm sorry, Aaron, what was that first question? Is it going to be a what?
Co-locatable, that means other carriers are allowed to be on the tower. So I'm sure a lot of people in the city of Fullerton are concerned about that, considering aesthetics, or everybody talks about stuff that they shouldn't be talking about when it comes to cell towers. Also, for Greg Seaborn, these are pretty much standard lease agreements. I'll just let you know. I know you probably want to review it to go over it. I do agree with him about the revenue that you're going to generate from this tower, and if it's going to go into the Parks and Recs, and then if it does get over the budget, or how would you say this? If the money is going into the Parks and Recs and the money does overextend for the Parks and Recs, where is that money going? Also, is the shelter, is it a vaulted shelter? Is it above ground shelter? Is it a cabinet? Is it going to be, since it's in a park, I would hope that they would vault it, because then it is out of the area of anybody getting around that cabinet. Can be very expensive to replace any type of equipment. And just the aesthetics. I mean, is it going to be like a monopine, a monopalm? Is it going to just be a slimline pole? Is it going to be a light, a monopole that has lighting above or below? So that kind of stuff. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you for those questions. And is that Mr. Hoppy or?
Mayor, maybe I should take the first piece of this.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, another question, or? All right. All right. Why don't we let the city manager give us a little summary, and then we'll have you add details. Thank you.
I'll take the historical part of this, as this went through the commission, Parks and Rec Commission, pretty extensively, this and other potential locations in town. So it was heard at that meeting. We did have quite a bit of public comment on that from both sports leagues in this case, and that was, I would estimate, a couple of years ago, and be happy to provide the comments that the commission made at that point. Concerns everything from aesthetics to the placement of towers on sports fields, so I think that was fully vetted there. This is in the configuration of a sports field light, so it just looks like that. It's not the monopine or the palms. The contract is our standard contract. Be happy to share that with Mr. Seaborn. It is our standard one that we've used at several locations throughout the city. As far as the revenues, the revenues off the cell tower lease, this has been a plan in place for a number of months, obviously, based on when it went through commission. This was delayed by the I'll just call it the merger, whether that's accurate or not, with T-Mobile and Verizon and AT&T, or excuse me, T-Mobile and AT&T, and now Verizon's coming in, making this request. So these revenues were counted as revenues for the Parks and Recreation Fund, and were part of the funding to supplant the budget cuts of the past couple of years. So that's how they're placed within the budget. I don't know if I've answered all the questions, but if there's, probably the.
All right, and we'd like to invite you up. You're a representative from.
Hello.
Hi.
Madam Mayor and members of the council, my name is Tanya Roth, and I'm here representing Verizon Wireless.
All right.
And in regards to I guess most of it was addressed by the city
manager. Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions that I can address?
Unless you have anything else you need to add that.
I believe that our understanding is that this was a fully negotiated document, and it was here just for approval and blessing, in essence, by the city council.
Okay, thank you. All right, so Mr. Seaborn, are your questions answered? All right, thank you. Anything to add?
Madam Mayor, if the city clerk could go to this computer, I got a couple of slides that might help relieve some of the residents' concerns. Okay. This is the ball fields that we're talking about. This shows the approximate location of the pole, which is on the far west, kind of northwest side. This shows the location of the vault. It is a portion below and a portion above grade. It's back behind the existing landscaping. It should not interfere with the plane of the fields at all, which was vetted out pretty thoroughly by the Parks and Rec Commission. This is the sketch of what the pole would look like, and the last one is a photo simulation of what the pole would look like. We think it's fairly innocuous. I don't live across from it, but we think it's a pretty good job of making it work with the ball field lights and everything else. Those are the ones that I had. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Do we have a motion to approve? Motion to approve, all in favor?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Yes, motion to approve items 2 and 3. Okay. All right, that closes our consent items, and we will move to our public hearing items 1 through 5. Item number 5, which is a proposal for a mixed-use development that includes affordable housing selected for an RDA assistance through the NOFA process, St. Anton Partners, LLC. And we will have Joan Wolf, although is she here? Oh, there you are, Joan. I'm sorry. Hi, Joan. Welcome.
Mayor Quirk Silva and members of the City Council, good evening. I'd like to give you a brief presentation on the St. Anton Partners project tonight.
Joan, get that microphone.
Yeah, just a little louder.
Closer, please. You have
Okay.
a deep voice. Speak out so those of us wearing hearing aids can hear what you're saying.
All right, I will do my best here. This project is located at 250 West Santa Fe Avenue. Here's an aerial photo of the project vicinity. We've got the project site outlined in yellow. You can see that it's adjacent to Amridge Park to the west. It's also near the community center, which is currently under construction, in the main library. It's about a quarter mile away from the Fullerton Transportation Center and just directly north of the railroad tracks. The site itself is located immediately adjacent to the parking structure that is currently under construction. This aerial photo was taken before the buildings were demolished and before the parking structure started into construction. But you can see the project's located on the south side of Santa Fe between Malden and Highland. There's 3 applications that accompany this project. First is a general plan revision, which revises the general plan land use designation from industrial to downtown mixed use. A zoning amendment to change the zoning of the property from the MG general manufacturing zone to C3 central business district commercial. And then finally, there is a major development project, which is a site plan and architectural review for a mixed-use development of 148 apartment units, 4 live-work units, 5,000 square feet of commercial area, and 3,100 square feet of a leasing office and resident activity areas. 147 of the units are affordable as the project is currently proposed, and then there's 1 resident manager unit. General plan revision, here's a map showing the location of the property and the existing and proposed general plan, as I just mentioned. Zoning amendment, same thing, the location of the property changing from MG to C3. The building itself, as I talk about the site plan, I think I'll skip to the plan here. We have a 4-story building that's wrapped around a 5-level parking garage. As you can see along the Santa Fe frontage, we have ground level commercial spaces in this area. We've got live-work units in this area, leasing office, and then the resident activity community club. There are apartments consolidated in 2 clusters, one on the west side, clustered around a community activity area, which would have a swimming pool and relaxation areas. On the east side, we have another cluster of units, again, around an open space area. The units themselves open onto the open space, so you've got windows and balconies toward the center, whereas the entrances to the units are on the periphery, and have been designed to, the building has been designed to mitigate noise impacts from the railroad tracks. You've got the parking structure that is in the middle, which shields the properties along the front from railroad noise, and then there's corridors along this southern property line internal to the building, which will let in natural light but will help block the sound. The building elevations, the building is proposed in a Mission Revival style. You can see on the north elevations, which face Santa Fe Avenue, you have quite a bit of articulation of the ground level so that you can see the pedestrian scale and the emphasis on the commercial properties on the ground level and differentiated from the residential up above. The rear elevation to the south facing the railroad track has less architectural detail, but still retains windows for light into the corridors and differentiation in colors and materials. Because the project is proposed as affordable housing, they are entitled to development concessions under the state density bonus law, and the 3 concessions that they are requesting is parking, open space, and setbacks. This property is within the Fullerton Downtown Strategy Report area, which recommends intensification of uses in the downtown area. You can see the site on the southwest corner of the map here, and the building height designated in that district is 50 to 70 feet. And the building complies with that. It's a little bit over 50 feet in height. These are photographs from the Fullerton Through the Years historic survey. These are both built in the 1920s and directly across the street from the site. They currently contain art galleries, and they have been refurbished so that they are much more attractive than they are in these photos. The project was reviewed by the Redevelopment Design Review Committee, who recommended approval. There was some discussion regarding the architectural style of the building and the compatibility of the mission style with the surrounding area, some discussion of contemporary versus mission, but the recommendation was for approval and move forward to the Planning Commission. Planning Commission also recommended approval subject to conditions and mitigation measures. And there were some issues that were discussed by the Planning Commission. There was a concern that the Planning Commission raised that the approval of the project might obligate the city to financial participation. And the response to that was, this is a review of the site plans and development project only. There is no commitment to funding at all at this point. That would happen at a future time if funding becomes available. Funding is a little bit uncertain right now under the changes in state laws, redevelopment laws. There was also discussion about concern of use of public funds for private projects and how that is offset by the state mandates to achieve affordable housing goals. Again, the Planning Commission was fine with the architectural style and recommended approval as is. I want to propose some modifications to conditions. These are what Lucinda just passed out to you. This is a revised Resolution 2012-22 for the development project. We've been working with the applicant, and we've tried to make the conditions a little bit more specific. First two, number 2 and 3, verifies that the project would be subject, the final design review would be through the Community Development Department rather than the RDRC. RDRC only if the director finds the plans inconsistent with the plans approved. Change in condition number 18 to tie the deed restriction to state density bonus law rather than the original 100% affordability that has been proposed because of the uncertainty of city funding at this time. Additionally, CalGreen Tier 1 requirements are applicable to all projects that receive funding through the NOFA. So if the city participates financially, then these Tier 1 requirements would apply. If not, they would not. Just a brief summary of redevelopment agency funding, a little bit of history. August 16th, 2011, the project was selected by the Redevelopment Agency Board to receive assistance through the Notice of Funding Availability process. Just recently, as of February 1st, the state has dissolved redevelopment agencies throughout. City Council is now designated as the successor agency, and the status of housing funds are uncertain at this time. The recommended action for the City Council is to approve the mitigated negative declaration, noting that mitigation measures reduce environmental impacts to a level less than significant. Also, recommendation to adopt the resolution number 2012-22 as revised in front of you tonight. Adopt resolution 2012-23 approving the general plan revision, and introduce ordinance 3178 to approve the zoning amendment. If you have any questions, I am happy to try to respond to them.
All right, I'm going to ask the council just to ask questions right now, and then what we'll do is go to the public and then come back for comments. So do we have any questions from the council?
In August, I believe it was August, we approved this project, didn't we? At that time, there was a redevelopment agency.
That's right. We selected the project for funding, but it was to come back for review of the details of the project.
But basically, that's an approval, isn't it? I mean, we said we would spend the money for this affordable housing. It had to be presented so that it met certain qualifications for the development. Isn't that right? I mean, it was chosen, one of
Yes,
13.
it was selected. That's correct.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's important to distinguish selection from the approval this evening. The council indicated that was their selected choice, but independently, this evening, you're to act based upon the documents before you, independent of that selection process.
But now we have no money for this. Is that correct?
Well, I think it's uncertain at this time, and we have some city staff here that can speak to that more if you have more questions about that.
Let me just, at the risk of sounding like that we are continuing to monitor the state actions on the affordable housing funds that were part of redevelopment are still retained by the city at this point, but everything is essentially on hold. The funding of actual projects, this and the other ones through the NOFA process and other projects in the city. So it is yet again another complication of the dissolution of redevelopment agency. However, this is an appropriate step in the process short of any commitment or obligation of funds, which we hope that there's some clarity and decisions by the state in the coming weeks that then that funding decision would be would follow this. So that is where we find ourselves along with many other cities and agencies across the state.
Go ahead.
Joan, as I understand it, this resolution that you just put before us is a kind of a, for lack of a better term, a backup plan, so that if necessary, and it has to be done with, I assume through private funding, that it wouldn't all be affordable housing. Is that correct?
That's the intent, is that if there is no money coming from the city, then the proportion of affordable units could be less, but it would still need to comply with state density bonus law in order to receive the development concessions.
Thank you.
Then I have some questions regarding that. And so what we did in August was go through the NOFA process. In essence, this was selected as one of the projects that was chosen. And since that time, redevelopment agencies have been, in essence, closed down. So we're now reviewing and possibly selecting what's suggested to us tonight. But my question is exactly what you're saying is if there is no affordable housing or less than what's expected, are you saying that we're going to be approving this and then the financing would come later? Because this seems to be, unless we know who's going to fund this exactly and where the dollars are going to come from, it seems difficult for me to really engage in this conversation. I mean, I know that I said this is part of the process, but the whole process has changed. And in essence, what I fear is that we're going to be saying yes to what was going to be an affordable housing project of 100 units or more that we were going to be supporting through our affordable housings and dollars, and then we very much may end up having a mixed usage, which I actually support. We may end up having a very different project and still have any dollars that we have going towards a project that was not specified. Long story short, I think that the game has changed here. So that's not really a question, it's a comment. So
And we're at the question stage right now.
Right.
Okay.
All right, do we have any other questions then? Because I do have a few others. Can we go to slide number 10? Let me see if this, I'm sorry, it was 11. I got my slides out of order. I'm sorry. All right, let me look here. Page 15, I guess it was. All right, so one of the things that I'm very concerned about is item number 18, the deed restriction for affordable housing tied to the state density bonus law. That's what I was trying to explain in a long way, that on the one hand, if we have certain conditions of approval that we went through in August and now we're back, if all of these change because of the funding, in essence, we're approving something that we really don't know, that we don't know what the capacity is going to be.
Well, I have another slide that if you'd like to see it, it summarizes what the state density bonus law says in terms of development concessions.
I would like to see that.
All right, the project is proposed at nearly 100% affordable. However, a project is entitled to development concessions if it provides substantially fewer units as affordable housing. So a project is entitled to one development concession if it includes 10% of the total units for low-income households or 5% for very low-income households. It would qualify for two development concessions if it included 20% of total units for low income or 10% for very low income. 3 development concessions is the maximum that's required under state law, and it's for projects that include 30% of the total units for low income or 15% for very low income. So they have asked for 3 development concessions, and if the project is approved, then this design relies on those 3 development concessions. So if they were to come in with a revised project, it would need to meet the third criteria here, 30% for low income or 15% for very low income households. If it provided fewer units than that as affordable, then the development project would have to come back for review again because it would be a different project. Now we do have a zone change and a general plan amendment, and those would go forward regardless. If they are approved tonight, they would go forward and the property zoning would be changed, and something else could go there in the future.
Well, that's my concern. So, all right.
Is there, I think there's been a little discussion that this project could go forward with market rate. Is there not or not? Or is that something that is a dream that has been mentioned to me, that there could be funding somehow for market rate? Because this could be a very attractive project downtown.
If it were to be a fully market rate project, we would need a revised site plan because there's not enough parking for a market rate project. The parking reduction is given to create incentives for affordable housing. So it would have to comply with the city parking requirements as well as setback and open space requirements if it were to be fully market.
So it'd have to be a lot less units, is that it?
Less units or somehow reconfigured to provide
A
the
whole
amount
new
of parking.
thing.
Different formula. All right, this is a public hearing. I'm going to open it up to the public for comments. I'm sorry, did you want to make? Okay. Okay. All right, did we take that out of order? I'm sorry. Please join us, sorry.
Okay. Madam Mayor, members of the council, thank you for taking the time to hear this item. I'm Sean Rawson with St. Anton Partners. Tonight I'm accompanied with Steve Agert, co-owner of St. Anton Partners, and Rachel Green, a project analyst. First off, I just wanted to say thanks to the city staff for all the work that they've put into to this project. We've actually been involved in this project now for just about a year, and so it's a project that we're extremely excited about, and we've done a tremendous amount of public outreach to the local residents of Fullerton as well as the business owners. Before I jump into project specifics, I did want to clarify a few issues that Madam Mayor, that you brought up, that we are an applicant for the NOFA funds, but tonight what comes before you is just the land use approvals. So the project moving forward, if we weren't able to get the NOFA funds, what you would be approving would be a project that has state housing density bonus concessions. So essentially, as Joan mentioned, it would be 30% low or 15% very low, and the rest of the project would be market rate. So it would allow for an alternative execution. So what we would ask is that you would approve the land use approvals tonight and allow the project to continue moving forward in the process. So that I just wanted to clarify that. I don't know if you had any questions.
You did say it would have market rate, did you?
Yes, so the way that state housing density bonus law reads, essentially a portion of the project would be made affordable, 30% at very low, or I'm sorry, 30% at low, 15% at very low, with the remaining being market rate. Like I said, the first course of action, or the execution that we would like to see, obviously, would be to get the housing bonds to move forward as a 100% affordable deal until the issue with the state is resolved. The determination of whether or not that's going to happen is still in flux. But tonight, we come before you just asking for land use approvals. I won't go through all the details of the project design. Staff did a great job of walking through that. I will point out, just in terms of the project's design, it's 148 units with 5,000 square feet of commercial space with 4 live-work units. So essentially, the entire street frontage along Santa Fe would be mixed use. The building is 4 stories wrapped around a 5-story parking garage. So, and it's in the Mission Revival architectural style that Joan mentioned. So essentially, the street frontage along Santa Fe would look like this. We've done, as I mentioned, a tremendous amount of outreach to the SoCo businesses. We also did an economic impact analysis showing the economic benefits of our project. And I can tell you that we've gotten a tremendous amount of support. We've got the support of the Fullerton Chamber of Commerce. We've got the support of Tom Meyer, formerly Fullerton Community Bank. now Opus Bank, as well as a number of the local businesses. They see the economic benefits that our project will provide the city of Fullerton and are very supportive of the project. So in terms of the architectural style, the top illustration will show you the view that you would see if you're standing at the corner of Malton and Santa Fe, and then the bottom would be if you're at the corner of Santa Fe and Highland. We think that the architectural style fits within the context of Fullerton, and that it'll be a tremendous asset to the community and to the city. So in closing, I guess what I would ask you is that we've been moving in the last year trying to get this project to become a reality. We know that there's a number of people in the city that are very excited about this project. We're extremely excited about this project. We want to be doing business in the city of Fullerton, and what we ask for you tonight is to approve the land use approvals so that we can continue moving forward in this process. With that, I'll close. I don't know if you have any questions.
Any questions for Sean? We'll call you back up here if we have any. Thank you. All right, from the public?
Good evening, Mayor Quirk, Silva, and Council. I've watched this project. I remember when the NOFA funding first came before this council. It happened to be in the heat of the Kelly Thomas incident, and there was some unknowns with the redevelopment cases that were out there. They hadn't been settled, so it had been sort of put off. But I do recall from the NOFA process that was very involved. Consultants were hired. There were volunteers from within the city who were appointed, staff that were appointed to this committee to rate the projects that were of the applicants. This project was rated, I believe, number 6 in the list. The first time that the NOFA process was presented with the projects and the top 3 projects, we just thought it was a matter of formality to wait until we knew what was going on with redevelopment before, the award, the 20 million or 18 million in bonds were going to be awarded. And but when this did come back before the council, I remember sitting in that meeting. It was another long meeting, the heat of the Kelly Thomas incident. It was such a long meeting. When I was taking notes for the Fullerton Observer, my battery got low. I sat in the back. And I remember Sunby Harrell walking up to me and saying, Jane, what's Ackerman doing here? Dick Ackerman turned out a politician, former city councilman here, now a lobbyist. Apparently was in the back room with the council. And we're like, what's he doing here? And surprise, surprise, when it came time for the decision on our affordable housing money, when the redevelopment agency was still considered possibly viable, the 3 majority on the council who are currently under recall pulled this project out from number 6 and put it before the other projects that had been rated higher. And it really looks fishy to me as a resident. And whether this money comes from our redevelopment bond money or if it comes from subsidized bonds through tax-free bonds through the state, either way, I don't like pet projects going to friends of a majority on our council who's under recall, and the person who was in the back room with them, Ackerman, is also working. He's an organizer of the anti-recall campaign. It looks like a little bit of quid pro quo to the public, and I've spoke against this project. Talked to the developer when 3 people, maybe 5 people showed up at the library when they were, doing their dog and pony for the public. Tried to convince them of putting more truly affordable housing in this project, lowering the rate, because really, if you have 2 minimum wage earners, they could not afford to rent at the rates that they're renting these properties at. And just to mention that there's nothing in this project that requires that those service industry jobs that will likely wrap that building, that those jobs aren't going to afford to pay rent to live in that building. So it really doesn't solve the problem of, people living, and working in the same place. But I'm digressing here. I've been tried to show my opposition to this project in all the other ways, in the way that it will affect cycling, trying to get from the bikeway here on Highland over to the parking in our new parking structure, or getting over to the bus and the train depot, because of the change to the setback on that project, and the road will still have parking on it, and it's going to be two-way traffic. I've spoken against it at the Planning Commission about the aesthetics of the building. It was, frankly, I don't think it was quite presented correctly in this report on the redevelopment design review committee's assessment. Actually, they recommended that it go back for a redesign, but the Planning Commission, while the Planning Commission member who spearheaded or started the discussion to say, well, we shouldn't really tell them what they should do with their project, started out by saying, I know nothing about architecture. So spoke against aesthetics. I can go on. It's not truly affordable. I have concerns about the negative mitigated declaration, because I think that truthfully it's going to impact our traffic. It's going to be horrendous. We already have the parking structure going in down there. I don't think we're looking at the reality of how bad it's going to get, because it's already bad now during rush hour. But I want to bring it back to the real reason why I'm opposed to this project, and it's because of what I saw, handout favors from the majority on the council to their good old buddy, and I'm just calling him like I see it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else speaking on this?
Good evening, Mayor Quirk Silva. My name is Rick Albron. I live in the city of Fullerton. On behalf of myself and Friends for Fullerton's Future, I hereby request that you deny the application for the project before you. The proposed site plan consists of a wall nearly 600 feet long and 60 feet tall that is planned to be located right at or close to the southerly property line. The elevations shown at the Planning Commission failed to adequately show the address of this wall. This wall will have a significant negative impact upon hundreds of residents and businesses located in the neighborhood to the south of the proposed project. The noise study does not consider the secondary impacts upon properties with sensitive receptors south of the railroad tracks. The negative environmental declaration of this project does not take into account the train noises that will be deflected by the massive wall. This serious public controversy regarding noise impacts that will be generated by the proposed project affecting our community. Furthermore, Resolution 2012-23, describing the proposed density as being consistent with the general plan designation, is complete nonsense. The proposed density is many times greater than the general plan designation. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public?
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council and staff members present. My name is Matt Leslie. I'm a resident of Fullerton, and I've come to ask you to not approve this project for a number of reasons. I'm going to concentrate on the aesthetics of it tonight. There is potentially public money involved in this project. I believe $11 million was the figure that was offered for public subsidy for this housing. And I just think that, frankly, if that much money is being spent of the public's, that we really deserve better architecture for this. I've been looking at this picture for a long time now, and I still can't find why it's a mission-style revival building. What it is it's a muddled collection of styles that has become a revival of this, that, or the other until it's just really one big, long mega project with a few things kind of slapped on the outside of it. There's no reason we can't have good architecture in the city. We have it in some of the older buildings because people took the time and effort to make sure that they would build lasting structures that people would remember. People would be proud to live in Fullerton because there are buildings around this city that are part of the fabric of where we live. People remark upon it. You live in Fullerton, where they have that fantastic building, here or there. And what I'm seeing in front of me is a building that looks like it could be anywhere. They look just like the ones in the Platinum Triangle in Anaheim. They look just like the ones in Brea. They look just like the ones, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. People can build these things on private land if they want. I guess there might be zoning issues or design review committee issues. even the RDRC in our city requested to see this again because they felt that there was perhaps a better style more appropriate for the area, and they were denied by the Planning Commission that chance, which I found quite shocking, that they would choose not to honor the work of another committee serving with them in Fullerton. It's just a tragedy when buildings like this go up without much thought, and it's rather awkward because I imagine that the architects are here. I don't mean any I have nothing against them, but I just think that there should be more respect for the spaces in the city when the public money is being spent. So when I hear terms like would fit in with the surrounding architecture or be consistent with the surrounding architecture, well, when you have a building that's a revival of this or revival of that, and then you have a building that's supposed to sit next to it that's supposed to fit in with it, well, pretty soon what you end up with is just this sort of muddling where buildings are built to look like some other style, and then you can't really figure out what the original style was, or you can't identify the original building. Good architecture fits anywhere. Good, thoughtful architecture. The style doesn't have to be consistent one next to the other. It just has to be good. And I think if our money's being spent, especially this enormous sum of money, we really need to demand more. And so I would request that you not approve this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers?
Good evening, Madam Mayor. Greg Seaborn. Everything that was said before me, I pretty much agree with. It's a lot of concerns over this. The largest concern I have is the fact that public funds are even being considered for use on this. Many of the issues, the concessions being made, such as the reduced parking, you're in a parking poor area to begin with, and if you reduce it by 96 spaces, okay, that's a real problem. You're talking about a lot of 4-bedroom units, and those 4-bedroom units might actually occupy maybe 2 roommates each that are perhaps college students. So you're looking at 8 cars for 1 unit, and there's just not adequate parking. I don't propose that you maximize the parking in that with that sort of formula, but certainly shortage of parking is a serious issue. Also, the reduced open space in the area. We already have a shortage of open space. Why do we want to make it compounded? Simply because there's other tall buildings in the area? I don't know that logic stands reason. The new zoning, is it consistent with the goals of the downtown core and corridor specific plan that is yet to been developed? Before we go forward with this, I really think that we need to actually address the downtown core and corridor and see if our infrastructure can support this sort of a development, along with the traffic flow, the traffic patterns. I mean, obviously we'd like them all to commute if we're not going to give them a place to park a car that they apparently aren't going to need. But there's just too many issues with that. Something else I want to point out is the pro forma for the project. If redevelopment funds were going to be used, it looks like it's taxpayer subsidized to the tune of $41 million and change. That's a big chunk of change for anybody to swallow. And if it is redevelopment funded, then there's little to no risk for the developer. Although at this point, looking at how far they've come with this project, I would think that maybe they've actually invested quite a bit in it, so they've taken some risk. The fact that it was rated so low by the selection committee and then bumped up has me very concerned. I didn't see Mr. Ackerman here, so I'm not going to draw any conclusions, but certainly his law firm being part of the project team, and then it gets bumped up, and he's also tied with the recall, the anti-recall. That certainly has some concerns, some red flags. Also, the staff memo from January of this year says that the trash enclosures are not accessible for waste disposal. In other words, there's trash containers, but the trash trucks can't get to them. Talk about a bad design. I mean, I just imagine this thing going forward, nobody addressing that till the end, and then it's too late to do anything about it. Also, something else I wanted to just bring up and find out, and I don't know that anybody here has the answer, but the property tax value, if it's developed as affordable housing, what is the property tax benefit to the city versus if it's market rate? Is there a property value, a tax value difference in what the city will receive back? You know, we have to look at this economically for the city, not just as a gift to a developer. We have to look at what the economic benefit is. And it's not just meeting affordable housing goals. We have to look at the health and welfare of the city and our city budget, which is running on deficit. And, you know, I just hate to see us continue digging a financial hole we can't climb out of for a lofty goal that really can never be achieved. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any last speakers?
Well, we got a
Is this
bunch
our-
of
is our-
pessimists here.
Is this our last speaker? Last speaker on this? All right, thank you.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Good evening again. Personally, I think it looks like a hotel. It's too big for Fullerton. I really don't think we need anything this large or this ugly. I really, really hope that you don't approve this. And I agree with Mr. Seaborn. It's just too big, and we really don't need it. We should have something more convenient and better looking. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we will bring back up our applicant.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council, everybody here. Steve Eggert, co-owner, St. Anton Partners. Just want to wrap up, rebut a few things. But I do want to start by referring to what Sean said, that we've been working on this project for a year, but we all remember it was only August 16 when you acted on the NOFA. And here we are on March 6th for land use approvals. And that really shows what a can-do staff can do. And that's something really to be commended here. We do a lot of projects around the state, and so I want to start off, with that. We really appreciate all the help. So that's what we're here for tonight. I just want to reemphasize, we're here for the land use approvals. Do we want mixed use here? The property is currently zoned industrial. Is that do we want to bring this into a mixed use zoning with a mixed use project such as this? I'm not getting into the affordability. Affordability is a question of financing. This here is land use, what's physically going to exist out there. And so I hope that you would agree with me that this is, without a doubt, moving Fullerton forward. This rounds out SoCo, rounds out downtown. This is a transit-oriented development. Even as a transit-oriented development, we have 2 parking spaces for every apartment. We have an 800 unit parking garage next door, which part of that which is in the following item after this. Part of the purpose of that garage is to serve the mixed-use needs downtown. We do not have any 4-bedroom apartments. I want to clear that up. We have reduced the number of, we have eliminated the 4s, and we have reduced the number of 3 bedrooms. The project is predominantly 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. And then the trash, of course, there's many other high-density projects here in downtown Fullerton and throughout Orange County, throughout Southern California, which have waste and waste removal, and it is routinely done through rollout containers, and that's what we're doing here. So there's nothing really controversial about any of that. But once again, I want to thank everybody for taking the time here. We're really proud to have the support of the local neighbors, Jack Franklin, Walt Johnson, Tom Meyer, Fullerton Chamber of Commerce, on and on. Appreciate all the work we've done with the Reach Out, the Fullerton Hardware guys, got them on board, and I think we're gonna have a great project for downtown, and I'm happy to answer any of the questions you have.
Okay,
Now,
questions?
We're talking about some market rate plus affordable, is that right?
That's right. So because the affordable that we're here, there'll be another day when we'll talk about 100% affordable project where the city wants to continue on with that. But what we're talking about.
This will have market rate.
Correct.
And that will pay taxes, will it not?
That's if it ultimately gets built out that way. We're scrambling around with a lack of funding, but that's what you're approving tonight.
Yes. Okay.
There's no commitment for additional affordable housing.
Okay. Thank you.
That's for another day. We hope you approve it on the other day, but that's not tonight. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I'm confused by that then, because what the report says is to approve 147 units of affordable housing. It's not talking about market rate.
We provided a written letter to the city asking them to correct that. It is, what is today is for 148 apartments, of which 30% must either be either 30% at low income or 15% at very low. The idea to take it up to the 100% is a financing question for a later action by this council. Does that make sense?
I think that's where the disconnect for me is, because the NOFA that moved forward in August was for 147 units of affordable housing, with the city putting in a certain amount of, in essence, subsidy. And I think what I'm hearing you say is, well, that's kind of up in the air, because obviously everything with affordable housing is. But you would like the approvals for the project as stated, and that could be 147 units if those dollars, in essence, return, or it could be a mixed usage with 30%, or is that what you're saying?
The physical
Market
form
rate?
is going to be the same. We're still talking about 148 units. The only question is, if we get the funding for the 100%, we'll go that route. If we don't, we'll scramble and try to figure out a way to make it work and if we don't, somebody else will, but at least the approvals are in place for that. That's all we're talking about.
All right, okay. I think I'm clear on that. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, any other questions from council? All right.
Charles, I see you there. There's something does trouble me, and I wish you would address this thing that the committee said this project was number 6, and we magically bumped it up, and if you would go through a little bit why that was done.
Well, the NOFA committee's role was specifically just to make recommendations to the city council and the agency board. The ultimate decision was up to them. We only kind of gave them some guidance in terms of what staff and some community representative and consultants thought, what we thought may have been the best projects and everything. The St. Anton project was not, I don't think, listed 6th. I think because some projects like, Richmond Group had 2 proposals, like one for 9% tax credits and one for 4% tax credits. So they kind of came in like 1st and 3rd, you know what I mean? So ultimately, St. Anton was certainly not at the bottom of the list as was indicated by one of the speakers. It was at the top tier. But ultimately, the decision was up to the city council and the agency. The recommendations were a couple tiered. You were to follow them or not follow them. It was solely up to your decision.
Thank you.
Don?
In regard to what you asked, Pat, all these units that were before us, the locations of all of these were in different locations. And I, for one, I'll speak for myself, I, for one, supported this unit because of the location it was at. The other locations I did not feel were nearly as beneficial to the city and as near to the train depot for transport and the bus depot for transportation for affordable housing. I realize that the funding and everything else has changed since redevelopment has gone, but as far as the rating was concerned, my support for this area was because of the location of it. The other one was over on the south or the northeast corner of Malden and Santa Fe, and that one didn't meet parking as far as I was concerned and things of this nature. The other units were in other parts of town that I didn't feel were nearly as good a location as this. So with that said, that's why I didn't consider it bumping it up. I considered it approving a location and a development that would be better beneficial for the city of Fullerton. I can support this mixed use presentation. I have feelings that mixed use is about the only way that this is going to get built, if it is built, because there's not really enough redevelopment money for housing for low housing that's available for a whole lot. So, but with that thought, the mixed use in this area, I think, is a much more advantageous for the city and the people that live here, and those that know more than I know about it are all on board with this. The Chamber of Commerce, all of the local area, business area in and around that area are supportive. And it was mentioned that Ace Hardware, which just happens to be one of my wife's favorite shopping places, has come on board too. So
I think it's a tremendous development. I think it will be beneficial. I think it provides what we're looking for if we can get enough money as far as all low and very low income. If we can't get enough money, at least it has to stay at least 20% low and 10% very low to continue to qualify for the development of this type of facility. So I think it's in a good location. It's close to transportation. It's in an area that this development will improve that area tremendously. Just across the street from that is an area that needs to be revitalized or rebuilt, and I would bet a little bit of money that that will be one of the next areas in the downtown that will be developed or redeveloped. And so with that, I can support this.
Right, any other comments?
Yeah. I don't know, it's recent National Geographic, I think on the cover it talks about the world population as 7 billion people, and it's started out with a line like this and it's going to go like this. Now it will be another 10 years or more, it'll be 8 billion, and then less than that 9, and so on. But the interesting article is it shows back in 1800, I think it was, London was the biggest city in the world of 1 million or 3 million, I've forgotten the details. But today, there are 50 some odd cities, or maybe even more than that, I don't remember, that have mega populations. And it says, in spite of all the things we think about, people want to move to the suburbs. That's not happening. They're moving to the cities. And the sky high rises are being built. Look at the Asian cities, all are being packed with brand new high rises. Europe, the same way. Fullerton of 140,000 is not approaching that now. But Orange County is over 3 million. We're a mega complex with Los Angeles right next to us. So we're going to have to think of the future. And not in my lifetime that we're going to see something like that, I don't think. But one of the reasons they talk about people moving to the cities, it's easier to get around. Mass transit. Some people don't even own cars. And many of these people, there's one page showing an apartment complex in Seoul, Korea, who now has over 10 million. At the end of the war, Korean War, it didn't even have 1 million. But anyway, it showed these small little apartments. Everyone was a little different with a family living in there. Now, I don't know that we're going to have this happen, but transient-oriented housing is here to stay. In fact, we won an award for about $1.3 million because we were planning that type of thing for the Fullerton Transportation Center. Because of the recession, that has not moved forward. This is a facility here that's right there, transient-oriented, next to the parking garage. And what I like about it is we're now talking about mixed use. In other words, affordable housing plus market rate. Now then, for those of you who don't like to use government money for projects, that means we've got to wipe out the military, farms, health care, God knows what else. Everything in this country has got subsidies. And affordable housing is another one. Now, we don't have to build it. It increases homelessness if you can't have affordable housing. And we listen to that every meeting about homelessness. Now, I don't necessarily love affordable housing, but it makes sense. And if you're going to live downtown, which we are promoting and transient oriented, you've got to have somebody to flip burgers, and they have to live someplace. Now, I don't want this all affordable housing either. But I'm very happy to hear that's market rate, because they will be paying taxes. And they will also be buying things downtown. And we have not been doing anything like that. We've got them on the books, but have not been doing something. It's time to start doing something. Whether we like it or not, the population is going to increase, and maybe nobody in this room will be alive when it gets to mega millions in Orange County, LA. But there's going to have to be housing there, because people are not going to live on the farms. If they can have affordable house, yeah, maybe they'll have something up in the mountains, but they're not going to live there. So I'm in favor of this. And Dick Ackerman's a smart guy. I've known him for years. And maybe he does. He's not against the recall because he knows the good people are here. But anyway, I appreciate his counsel, and I have over the years. Now, I'm not buying it because he talked to me. I talk to everybody that's got a project. And I try to pick the one that seems the best. And if this can have market rate with it, it's a good one. And I don't care if you think it looks ugly. Other people think it looks pretty. I'm not judging it on that. I'm looking at livability, close to the transit, close to our markets. And I am for it.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Jones.
By the way, bike paths are also subsidized.
All right. All right, I'll just make a few comments here, and then we can take this to a vote. I am, as far as the walkability, the transportation, the TOD, as far as housing in our downtown, I very much support that. And I think it's one of the elements that we want to encourage. As far as the paying for the project, that's a whole nother question. And as I already made comments earlier, when we engaged in the NOFA, times were different. We certainly had a redevelopment agency at that time. My concern with the approval of this project is that, in essence, there are incentives and concessions placed on this based on the formula that we would be using affordable housing dollars for that. If approved, and then those dollars do not, in essence, come back to us, and it then is either built through private funds and so forth, or we do have market rate, those concessions, incentives are in essence put in there, and yet that formula is not the formula that would, essence, be the same formula as initially stated. So some of those concessions to me are very important, things like open space and setbacks and so forth. So it really is a different set of rules for a different set of projects. So those are concerns for me. But it is a difficult situation. I think one of the things with affordable housing that we continue to hear about is the mandates, and the whole redevelopment discussion has been going on really for many years here in Fullerton. But with those affordable dollars, because they're so uncertain, to me it feels like, and we have a project right after this one coming, that we have a new set of rules. And so at this point, I'm not going to support this tonight. I think we need to have a clearer view of where we're headed and what we want to do with any funds that we may or may not have. So I won't be supporting this. Do we have a motion?
Madam Mayor, if I may, though, I want to remind everyone that this is land use approval. It is not approving the project, or whether it's 148 units or whatever. This is land use approval, changing a zoning from manufacturing to something where, whether this project goes into it or another one, we have a land use that we can use appropriately. I think we're looking too
No, we would be approving the project. We would be approving the project, unless I'm incorrect in this. And we would be approving that. We would be changing the zoning, going from industrial.
Right.
But we are also approving the project
well,
as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
I stand corrected on that. But I do support the project. I want you to know that I do support the project.
All right. Do we have a motion?
Well, I will try to, this is a long one, but I move to approve number one, approve mitigated negative declaration, including mitigation measures and mitigation monitoring program, finding that the potential environmental impact can be reduced to a less than significant level. 2, adopt resolution number 2012 through 22, approving a major development project, Zebra Ocean, November 11-00096, including site, architectural, and landscape concept plans for a mixed-use development containing 147 affordable residential units, 1 resident manager unit, 4 live-work units, 5,000 square feet of commercial space, leasing office, resident activity areas, and associated parking on property located on the south side of Santa Fe Avenue between Highland and Malden Avenues. 3, adopt resolution number 2012 through 23, approving a general plan revision, Lincoln Romeo Papa 11-00012, to change the land use designation of a 2.4 acre site from industrial to downtown mixed use for property located on the south side of Santa Fe Avenue between Highland and Malden Avenues. And 4, and hopefully lastly, introduce ordinance number 3178 for first reading by title only and waive further reading of the ordinance.
I second, and I'd like to comment real briefly.
All right, we have a motion and a second and a comment.
Yes, there was a proposed modification of some of those conditions. Do you know which resolution that was in?
Lou, do we need something else on this?
Yes, with
I
regard to
believe the resolution.
1222 had proposed
title still the same?
modifications.
Yeah, the title hasn't changed, just the content of the
Right,
resolution. has
that's
those
what I thought.
modifications.
I think we've got the correct one.
Yeah, so you could say 12.
The motion includes those modifications.
As
then.
modified, yes.
Yeah, here it goes from 2012.
Wait, where are those modifications?
It's in that 2012.
These were referenced by Joan in the bullet points in the presentation, as well as they're on the dais in the revised documents. If you'd like to see
Right
those
here.
on the screen, we could bring those up.
Okay.
Like.
All right, I have them here, thank you. All right. So was that read in as far as the ordinance part that was added in? Resolution.
The motion will say adopt resolution number 2012-22 as modified.
All right.
Yeah.
In
We had a
addition
mo-
to everything else you just
That's
said.
part of it.
All right, we had a motion.
And I second that.
Okay, and a comment from Dr. Jones?
Yeah. Now, I want this all affordable, as I mentioned. And I don't think it's going to happen. It may not even get any of it. But I want the idea of this down here. I want to have market rate, and if we have to mix in affordable, which we need down there too, that's okay. But I would like to see this go, and I'd like to see it go in my lifetime, because it's been so long since we built the darn thing. The only thing that I know we're building right now is down at College Town for the college students. We need to build some for people that want to live downtown and be close to the transit center. Thank you.
Thank you, and that I agree on, that market rate would be an excellent choice there. All right, so we had a motion and second, and do we have a vote here? All in support?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. That moves forward as a 3-1.
And I
Thank
need-
you for working here with us. We
Mayor,
appreciate it.
If I could read the title of the ordinance.
You may.
Ordinance number 3178, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Fullerton, California, approving zoning amendment LRP 11-00013 to change the zoning of property at 250 West Santa Fe Avenue from MG General Manufacturing to C3 Central Business District Commercial.
All right, thank you. All right, we will move to item number 3.
6.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking on the wrong page here. All right.
Let's don't repeat.
All right, item number 6, the financing for the proposed Alexander Senior Housing Project located at 345 East Commonwealth Avenue.
May I ask something real quick?
Yes.
We
Wait,
have
wait,
been
wait, wait, wait.
continuing
Who is
this
making
each
that noise?
week,
I'm
right?
sorry. Oh, all right.
We have been continuing this each week, waiting for clearance from the state. So this is basically unchanged, is it not, from what we have been voted on every week now recently?
Yeah, this is still it's status quo. It's kind of out of our hands. It's the legislation up in Sacramento that has not enacted on the two bills that are currently being proposed. So my recommendation was to continue it, but not just for 2 weeks, but continue it to April 17th. So that's like a month and a half away.
I make that motion.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to continue, a second, and it's a public item, so.
All right, several weeks ago, when this first came up, I made some comments, and I want to reiterate some of those. First of all, the California Municipal Finance Authority is a public agency. It's a joint powers authority, and the agreement that if you were to approve this, you would also be agreeing to the terms of joining the joint powers. And part of that is you essentially take responsibility for their debt as well, and they have massive amounts of debt. Also, the authority only approved $14 million. Only $14 million, good Lord. For construction of the apartment building, not $14.5 million, which is what the staff report says. So there's a $500,000 fudge in there that needs to be addressed. You know, there's still been no new or additional information. It's been provided on this by the city, which means I still have to go to the California Municipal Finance Authority and sort through their documents and their records, which this agency is not a member of, in order to find out information that pertains to this city, and that is very frustrating. At this point, we really shouldn't have to go to a third party in order to find financing for this. If a developer wants to do it and the developer is willing to take the risk, let the developer do it. If we have to pay for it, if the city has to go find creative financing, I'm against that. There were also some issues with the property value. It was reportedly being purchased for $2.5 million, but comparable sales show vacant land in the area at somewhere around $1.3 to $1.6 million. And that's based also on assessors' values, and it was recently reassessed and not just under Prop 13. It was for a grant deed. The agency, California Municipal Finance Authority, in just 2011, it accrued $3.5 billion in debt. $3.5 billion. That's just in principal. There's still it is still a $25.5 million boondoggle, and if you add in interest, you're looking at more like $40 million. So another $40 million down the toilet. If you go by the $40 million, you know, the interest on it, we're looking at $425,000 per unit for what we would call affordable housing. I strongly suggest that that term be unaffordable housing. I would think that we can look at condos and other existing structures and consider purchasing those for a lot less. I mean, there was just recently an apartment building that went for sale here on the west side, and it sold for $20 million. This is $25.5 million. The other one's $20 million, and I believe it was significantly more units, had adequate parking, was fairly self-contained. I mean, you know, if we're looking to solve an affordable housing issue, which I'm not sure that we're really addressing that, there's better ways to handle it. I don't think this is it. You know, the going rate for a Fullerton condo is $230,000, and that's from the Orange County Register this past February, not $425,000 that we'd be paying. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, there was a motion to continue and a second.
I need to comment.
Yes.
Okay, first of all, we're talking about affordable housing for seniors. There's a great lack of senior housing. It's been shown statistically, and you're not going to be able to have affordable housing and seniors living far away from downtown. These people can walk downtown. They're across the street from the transportation center. This is a TEFRA possible loan, right?
All that's before you is, okay, just so it's clear, all that's up before you right now is a motion to continue.
All right, but one of the arguments to destroy this idea is that we're going to obligate the city, and a TEFRA loan does not obligate the city, does it?
No, that's true, but we'll come
Okay,
back with a full
so that
presentation.
doesn't mean the city's gonna be stuck for anything that somebody finances this if it comes through. So anyway, we've approved this, we need it for seniors. Maybe I'll even have to look at it, I don't know, I'm getting older now, I'll be 79 next
All right,
month.
a motion to
All right.
continue, and did we have a date set? I'm
I
sorry.
think you said April 17th, Madam
April
Mayor.
17th at
April
6:30 p.m.
17th, and we had a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Moving that forward to continue, and therefore we will be able to engage in that conversation again. All right, let's move to regular business item, SoCo parking structure, and Mr. Hoppy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. I do have a little bit of a presentation that may help. Most of it is already in your agenda package, but for the residents that don't have a copy of it. This is the SoCo parking structure next to what in this photograph is the old abandoned Donald Duck citrus plant, which is now all basically demolished. The reason we're here tonight is to establish basically a parking management plan for the new parking structure. There's 814 spaces that are going to be provided with this. We're obligated under contract with OCTA to provide 810, so we actually exceed the minimum. Also, because there are grants from Caltrans, the rail division, 15% of the parking spaces have to be set aside for Amtrak riders. So when we were looking at the parking, staff looked at both Amtrak and Metrolink. We had to balance the long and the short-term parking, whether or not there would be parking available for the local businesses. And then we've also allowed for future pay-to-park systems as part of the overall design and how we would incorporate that later, but that is not included in the recommendations tonight. What we do have are a list of all the various types of parking spaces, both short and long-term. You'll note that there are 6 electric car charging stations. That was a concern for several people that called the city and asked if they would be provided, and they actually will be provided. 3 on the first floor and 3 on the second floor. You can see there's 118 spaces that are included as part of the Amtrak requirement for their specific parking spaces. Looking at it graphically, this is basically the basement. The colors are keyed as to whether or not it's Amtrak or Amtrak Metrolink, working our way up to the ground level. The area that you see in yellow on what's the top of the page, which is on the north side, that is at ground level, and that is the short-term parking. It's called commuter parking, but it'd be 3-hour parking. We suspect that most of the commuters will not park here because they'll be gone longer, which means it will be available for the businesses. We did get approval from both Caltrans and OCTA to try this, and hopefully it will work out. They were concerned that several of the structures that have been built over the years have been usurped by the people that are patronizing the local businesses, and there's not enough parking left for the actual commuters, which is what it's being built for. Moving further up, you'll see additional Amtrak parking. It also shows all the disabled parking on the various floors. And then the long-term parking, the 72 hours or 7 days, is on the very top floor. We are recommending that council adopt all of the existing parking that's included, and I believe it's table 1 in your attachment. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Do you have any questions from council?
I move to approve adopting table 1 as the master plan of parking for the SoCo parking structure, 150 West Santa Fe Avenue.
All right, we have a motion. We'll hear from you, Jane.
Yes, I filled out a card
Yes,
to speak on this item. I just had a question about, it sounds like this item is just addressing, what's allotted for the different uses. I was curious how how it would be enforced. Is that of discussion right now, or because sort of what's allotted? I'm sorry, I'll just let you answer it.
Well, obviously, it'll be the parking control officers that will enforce it. We'll be monitoring who parks there and who doesn't. It'll be pretty easy to figure out right away if someone's parking there short-term on one of the long-term spaces that's set aside for Amtrak or Metrolink, and they immediately disappear to one of the stores and then leave shortly thereafter. We suspect that most of the parking, because it's set up for the transit users, that a great deal of the parking that's going to be needed for the people using the train will actually be taken up long before the businesses are open. So we think it, for the most part, it'll be self-policing, but we will be monitoring it closely.
I'm on that same note. I think one of the things we're going to need to analyze is, again, now that there is an approval for a housing very close to this, that, you know, are those going to be overnight parking? Are people going to, you know, who may use it overnight, but are they going to be up and moved out by the time you have the morning commuters, which is usually about 6:30 in the morning? So we want it to be used at capacity, but we also don't want, we've had some of those issues with the SoCo housing where kind of a shared usage, and then you have a lot of issues going along with that. Mr. Seaborn.
Madam Mayor, the parking restrictions are no parking from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. And so if that's the case, you know, I wonder if, okay, just what I read. Okay, so, but the same question is still comes up. If you have all these nightclubs and bars that are emptying out around 2 a.m., are they going to be ticketed for, you know, maybe they get there 2:15, 2:30, you know, staggering takes a while. You know, is there a pragmatic approach to dealing with that issue of a large population suddenly exiting and maybe not being able to conform to that 2 a.m. time slot?
Yeah, good question. Thank you. Madam Mayor, if you...
Well, just on the same note is also with Amtrak, there are some people that want to take the train to Santa Barbara for an overnight. And, you know, we want to make sure we just, I think, have multiple uses there. And
That's in what my motion was. 72 hours.
Right.
Yeah.
On the third and fourth floor, there is extended parking for the Amtrak users. They can also get a pass from the Amtrak station. In terms of the 2 to 5 restriction, there is no parking on any city parking lots or parking structures from 2 to 5 unless designated otherwise. And it's just like the at-grade parking lots that are adjacent to several of the businesses downtown. The police are not in a hurry to cite anyone. They usually let them move away from the areas. If we bring a parking control officer, it won't be to try and cite someone just as they're leaving the bar. It's been very successful. Well, sorry. That part of it's been very successful downtown, and we do it the same way here.
hey, thank you. Yes. Thank you, Dr. Jones. All right, we have a motion and a second. Anybody else from the public would like to speak? Any council members, any other questions? Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Right?
You do have to have comment time.
Yes, okay. I just want to say, isn't it wonderful? This whole parking garage was paid by subsidies. Isn't it wonderful, too, that we got that in Fullerton? Because Orange County is a giver county. We give a heck of a lot more money to the state than we ever get back. And when we got the $42 million to build this, what a wonderful thing. But we're still in a negative tax exchange. I support this.
Okay, thank you. Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. I might not have been listening carefully, but when do we expect that to be opened?
Soon.
It should be open in a couple of months. We're obligated to open it by June as
All
part
right.
of the contract with the OCTA.
Okay, thank you. And our last item for tonight, 2012 legislative platform.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. Robert Ferrier from the City Manager's Office. The item before you concerns the 2012 legislative platform for the city. The platform is essentially a general statement of the city's position on issues that have the potential to impact municipal operations. The City Manager's Office is, we prepare the platform for your review in consultation with each department. They are asked to review the prior year's platform and provide any suggested changes for your consideration. The platform, as you can see, is divided into 11 general categories: administration, environment, housing, land use planning, library, parks and rec, HR and risk management, public safety, public works, revenue, and transportation. Staff uses the platform when reviewing bills as they flow through Sacramento and DC, and reviewing the potential impacts they may have on the city. We also provide the platform to the city's lobbyists, Townsend Public Affairs, TPA, as well as our legislative advocates, LOCC is the League of California Cities. We ask, as they monitor legislation on our behalf, that they also keep our platform in mind. The platform is not intended to be all-inclusive. It is not does not presume to address every measure conceivable under the sun. Likewise, the platform does not speak to individual bills. It's not something where you'll see opposition to SB 111 or AB 321. It's more a statement of principle than anything else. It does not register support or opposition to any one bill. There are 80 planks or elements on the platform. Staff is happy to address each one of those in turn if you'd like. Absent that, we ask for questions, or if you have edits to the proposed platform, please provide that to us, and then we ask you to approve.
Yes, we have 11, is that correct, there?
11 sections, yes, sir.
So we would ask our lobbyists for the city to see those 11 items, and if something comes up in one of those, he would speak for us. Is that right?
Yeah, what will happen is if they'll be watching bills, and if they see one that matches something the city of Fullerton is interested in, they'll let us know and say,
sometimes, I think in the federal case, we feel like 11 would be too many to go forward with. But these all look like good 11 ideas. I would support that. It may be that we won't get all 11, maybe we won't get a single one, but I think they are good ideas, and I would be supportive.
Any other comments? Any comments from the public?
Good evening, Council, Mayor Quirk Silva, Jane Rands. I'm hoping that my email I sent might have gotten to you on time. I sent it at 3 this afternoon to the council
I don't think
with
I got
some
it.
recommended changes. So you have to suffer through me making the suggestions. If you have the legislative agenda before you, in the first section under administration, the last bullet point says support measures that seek to protect local government revenues from takings by the state. The way I read this, based on discussions that both Mayor Villaraigosa from LA and our current governor have been having, is this sounds like it would be in support of some revision to the existing Proposition 13. And I was wondering if that was what was intended here. And I'm not recommending any changes to that. I just wanted to point that out, that may be an intention, or I would interpret it that way, possibly if I was a lobbyist. On the air quality section, the last 2 bullet points, I feel that there may be a conflict there. The 3rd bullet point says oppose any policy or guidance of the California Air Resources Board or any other agency that restricts the introduction of mixed-use development projects near multimodal transportation centers. And then the following bullet point is actually under multiple sections, and it states, supports policies, guidelines, incentives, and funding for programs with combined benefits to air quality, water quality, affordable housing, infrastructure, and public health. Now, the public health aspect and the affordable housing aspect in that bullet point sounds like we're in support of those things. But the item before that, if we're going to oppose air quality standards near multimodal transportation centers, that would sound like we're going to oppose issues regarding air quality in our transit-oriented development that we're discussing for downtown, and where we're putting affordable housing, which brings about the issue of what typically happens is the poor people get the crappy air. So I would like to resolve that conflict, possibly by just removing item number or the 3rd bullet point under air quality. Under water quality and water supply, the 1st bullet point states support increasing the water supply in the city of Fullerton and Orange County. I know that we've had discussions before. There's been a number of times that desalinization reared its ugly head on consent calendar items and has brings people from all issues very concerned about the high cost of desal. And I recall the last time that came up, Mayor Quirk Silva had asked that we do some discussion and study on desal within the city before approving anything. I would like to exclude that one, or if we want to have support increasing the water supply in city of Fullerton and Orange County, to specifically exclude desal at this point, because we don't know if we want to be in support of pursuing costly water, which when I was on the DWP trip, our representative Jim Blank on the water board over breakfast mentioned that that actually costs 5 times what the cost of our current water. Actually, I think it's the current cost of DWP water, which is even higher than our local water cost. So it's probably not fiscally responsible to support that as it's stated. Then under land use and planning, the 4th bullet point, here, and this is because something very near and dear to a number of people in our town, support policies which would obligate educational institutions to take reasonable effort to mitigate significant environmental impacts of projects, including, and then just talks about getting money out of them. But I think that it would be serve the people in our community better if we included in there impact on neighborhoods. I'm coming to thought are sort of the parking issues that we've always dealing with around the schools, but even more so when Fullerton College was proposing to put in the lighting and the sound system in that new stadium that they put in near that neighborhood. Fortunately, the neighbors were able to get an ear from them, or get their ear and have that limited. But I think we ought to look at quality of life issues for residents here, not just getting money and saying it can stay that way. And then specifically, I want to add this under public safety. I think we need to add a separate bullet point that states support police officers' Bill of Rights reform to remove unintended consequences that prevent community oversight, or simply support POBAR reform to remove what prevents community oversight. And before that light goes red, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Jane, for bringing those up. I'll be brief. I really will. There's a lot of overlapping statements in here, like support policies, guidelines, incentives, and funding for programs with combined benefits to air quality, water quality, affordable housing infrastructure, including multimodal transportation systems and public health. I mean, that's a very broad and inclusive thing, and it seems to be inserted throughout here. I think if you're going to talk about water quality, talk about water quality. Stick to the issue at hand. When you bury that in there, it gets very convoluted. Also, under environmental, the idea that the city wants to support for streamlined environmental review of governmental infrastructure projects funded through the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. Although I like the idea of a streamlined environmental review, I really think that's true of any infrastructure project. If it's a city and they're building rebuilding the street, I think that if you have to go through some sort of environmental review, I think that it should be streamlined. It's tax dollars we're talking about, and I think that's just reasonable and fair. Also, the libraries, it would probably be good to consider that some support state and federal funding policies and incentives that modernize public libraries into paperless technology ports. How many of us get information from the internet? It's very powerful. I think the city could actually capitalize on that and actually sell some sort of a subscription that you'd get some otherwise cheap Wi-Fi and have that at your home. That may be in competition with our cable provider or our phone providers, but I think it's something that should be looked at and considered. Thank you.
Hey, thank you for those comments.
I move the item.
Okay.
I'll be quick.
Thank you, Matt Leslie, Fullerton resident. On the last page of the legislative platform under transportation, there is an item that says, I quote, support planning efforts for the California high-speed rail project with its current alignment serving North Orange County and exploring alternative parking and related infrastructure within the city. I have some real concerns about that. I personally don't understand why the high-speed rail needs to even come into Orange County. There seem to be significant engineering problems associated with that. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that the idea was that it was supposed to start in Anaheim. My understanding is that the high-speed rail basically between Anaheim and LA would shave maybe 3 or 4 minutes off a trip that's already available easily from the Fullerton Transportation Center or from Anaheim, for that matter, into Los Angeles. I really think that we should not support having high-speed rail extend all the way into Orange County. I don't believe it's worth the upheaval that it would cause. So I would request that you please remove that. Thank you.
All right, we have several requests. We have several comments. We're going to go ahead and close this item, and we have a motion to approve. You have a second?
Second.
And then I'd like to comment too.
All right.
These 11 things are great generalities. Yes, here a lot of specifics have been brought up. And we don't, because these generalities here, it's like apple pie and motherhood. Some motherhood is not even good. And I've had some bad apple pie. But if specific things come up to the legislature by the legislators, we can address it. No, I'm not in favor with high-speed rail the way it is now. I think it's a terrible waste of money in boondoggle and not necessary. And there are other things like that. But in general, these are the things that are rather vague. And these 11 items, I don't know that any of them are going to really come back to us. There may be some bills that'll come up in legislature that we can then address, and we can talk to our lobbyists up there or to our legislators and say, we don't want that. This environmental thing doesn't fit our city. We don't want it. But for now, we have to have some sort of platform.
All right, any other comments?
I have a comment in reference to high-speed rail. I don't guess it being in this platform is going to hurt anything. However, I just want to go on record stating that I do not support high-speed rail at its present proposals as far as only going to Anaheim and stopping there. I think that if high-speed rail comes into Orange County, it should actually benefit all the cities. The original route was through Orange County, come into Orange County and leave Orange County going to San Diego. That's changed. So I don't support building high-speed rail through Fullerton. To develop it would change a tremendous amount of the landscape. The towers and things that are necessary for a high-speed rail would take parts of our library and other things. So I support everything except high-speed rail.
I would, if you want to extract that, I would support it. I don't either. I mean, if that's very satisfactory. I think it's one item that's
I'd
bad.
like to hear whether our city manager feels that we should leave it in or not.
I would suggest that we would.
We're not speaking out, please.
As far as the high-speed rail, it is so early in the planning stages and that's why we only referenced the planning effort for high-speed rail. The current thought now, as Mr. Leslie pointed out, would that high-speed rail would be unlikely to come down into Orange County. However, improvements to create a Metrolink Express system could become part of the plan, which would include grade separations and other safety features that would allow an express system through a Metrolink serving all of Orange County to be part of it. So that's by way of explaining that the wording in here is to support the planning effort and not explicitly support high-speed rail.
I can support leaving it in if we just take out the last few comments.
Exploring alternative parking and related infrastructure.
At its present route.
All right, let's go ahead and move that item to, as far as support, leaving it as is and taking out. Which part would you like to take out, Don?
Now, just take the high-speed rail project, aligning and serving North Orange County and exploring alternative parking, blah, blah, blah. That's fine. Just leave out the currently assigned That's okay. Just leave it the way it is.
We've been working on this issue pretty extensively in SCAG, and actually the comments stated here are similar to those of other SCAG members, but one of the issues that SCAG is dealing with is, although many aren't on board literally with high-speed rail, there is the discussion that we want to be at the table so that when that $1 billion comes to Southern California, we have a role in really not only working towards gaining some of those funds here, but to make those connections through MetroLink that we really need. And that's one of the huge areas that we're lacking, is the connections, not only through MetroLink, but kind of, as they say, once people get off MetroLink, the local shuttles, connections, trolleys. So although it's vague, I think there's enough actually support in Orange County to say we may not be on board with high-speed rail, but we certainly want to see that $1 billion spent here in Southern California.
How about if you say this year? We're
This
not
year.
on it this year.
Well, we'd like to see any dollars for transportation, I think, as soon as possible. But there were a few that were mentioned that I actually had highlighted myself, and on administration, support measures that seek to protect local government revenues from takings by the state. That, I think, could imply anything from redevelopment funds to any other kind of mandates that can be put upon us. And it says support measures that seek to protect. I, in fact, would like to see us keep as much of our local funding as possible. On the other hand, we currently have the new redevelopment that will be moving some of our dollars to the state. So that's a little vague. Does anybody have any suggestions?
Isn't that what Prop 22 was all about?
Prop 13?
Or whatever. No, not 13. But you're going to take away money from the state, something like that.
if I
We're
can
nitpicking here. We
high-speed
can
rail
nitpick the rest of the night.
All right.
I would just say these aren't meant to imply anything. They're meant to be broad. And if you wanted an example of that one, this would lead us down to if council would approve it, as a policy supporting retaining the affordable housing funds that we have now. That would be something that will become before the legislature in the coming weeks.
All right, so it's kind of a double-edged sword. On the one hand, you want to keep your money here. On the other hand, all right. So I see what you're saying on that. Well, one that is important to me, and I'm hoping I can get support here, is on the water quality and water supply. I do think at least putting in some type of language that refers to desal, because desal is something that kind of seems to creep up here or there in various language, and it's a very expensive form of water. We've had more than a few presentations where it's implied that we support that, and I do not support desal. So do I have any support here that we actually put in language about desal?
Why don't you say this year? Because if this population explodes one of these days, that is the only way you're going to get enough water. That's what's happening in many countries that are water short now. They have to get desal. So if you're going to say ad nauseum forever and in perpetuity, that's wrong.
Well, what about this year, 2012?
All right, I'll
20,
go
all
with
right. That desal, because I think that's at least that it would need to come back very specifically to council for them to completely vet that.
Well, that development is being built down in Huntington Beach right now, and I think we would be foolish to restrict ourselves from the use of that water. In fact, my understanding, we've already contracted to buy several hundred acre feet of that water if they ever do come online.
Is that true?
No, what has been sent is that we would be interested in reviewing the price of the water should we need water in the future. It was a general statement, not any contract to purchase. The only other point I'd make, Mayor, to your question was this is a one-year document, and it gets revised every year.
All right, well, maybe at this point, putting that item isn't as necessary as us bringing that desal conversation back to the city council, and really us not only we're going to be talking about water in April, but really having that as an agenda item. So maybe not including it here, but because this has been a topic of conversation at least the last few years, and I think that we really need to understand what an MOU means, what a letter of intent means, and we haven't done that yet. So I would propose not putting it in here, but having an agenda item that talks about desal specifically. All right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we'll move that forward, and that will close our last council items. Do we have any council members that have items to discuss or for the agenda? All right. I do. I have something that I have been talking to people about for the last, actually it seems, I was going to say several months, but it's really been several years of concern at some of the community meetings, not only tonight, in the past, and council regularly receives communication about this, is our downtown. And with our downtown, I think we have many things to be proud of. We have our preserving our historic charm. We have, thriving businesses that are independent businesses, restaurants, and so forth. But the other side of that is we have some issues that I think that we need to, in essence, really focus on. We've done this over the years with our ECHO team, with the police department. We've put in extra police officers down there, but some of the issues have continued. We've never been able to really get a handle on that. Everything from our CUPs with our restaurants to our ABC license to our trash down there, graffiti, vandalism, even some of the stated information tonight about are our police officers spending extra huge amount of their time, in essence, really, as was saying, being bouncers outside. When we even look at the Kelly Thomas incident, that happened in downtown on a Saturday. I hope I'm correct. I think it was a Saturday night. So what I'd like us to do is see if we can, I know that in the past, I think it was the police department that actually, I kind of remember that Greg Mays was heading up was it the ECHO team? And there was some energy placed to bring some people together in the downtown to really look at that. I'd like to see maybe if we could resurge that committee in some way. I know we've just all the council members have appointed ad hoc group for business, but I think this really is separate because almost weekly we're getting letters about, like we said, graffiti, some of the things that just really do not reflect the town that we want to. And I think it's worth kind of bringing people together, not only restaurant owners and bar owners, but some of the community members. So I'd like to either place that on the agenda if we can, or refer it to you, City Manager.
Okay, I think we have the direction that an overall look at the downtown from security, licensing, cleanup, et cetera, and bring back, revisit that as far as what we have in place now, and bring back some options for you.
Right. Okay.
I can support that.
I would support giving that to the city manager to research those issues that you just got through talking about, and once he investigates it and so forth, he can either agendize it or and come back to us, or whatever he deems appropriate.
Yeah, come back with a report or some type of recommendations and so forth. All right, anything else? Then I will just like to let you know that on our March 20th that we will be missing two of our colleagues here, Councilmember Jones and Councilmember McKinley, and we will be back on March 20th, 2012, and happy St. Patrick's Day in the meantime. Thank you for coming.